I still remember the night it all started to crack. We were gathered around the dinner table, the clinking of silverware against ceramic plates filling the silence. I was halfway through my chicken pasta when my dad Tom looked up and said, "David, we're going to need your workspace." I froze my fork hovering in midair. What? The garage. We're giving it to Alex for his content creation. He needs a proper space for his streams, he added, barely meeting my eyes. My heart sank. That garage was my sanctuary. The place where I'd spent the last 3 years building my data analytics business. Late nights, early mornings, and countless weekends hunched over my custom-built desk, grinding through client projects to make a name for myself. I paid them $900 a month in rent, covered half the utility bills, and often bought groceries to keep the household running. I wasn't just a tenant, I was the backbone of that house, even if they never said it out loud. I glanced across the table. My younger brother, Alex, 21, sat there with his usual smug grin, the one that always made me feel like he knew something I didn't. He'd failed out of community college twice, but somehow convinced my parents that his content creation dreams were worth betting the house on. Meanwhile, I had a steady stream of clients, real income, and an actual career, but that never seemed to matter as much. Mom Linda didn't even look up from her phone as she chimed in, "Alex needs a proper studio, you know. He's growing his audience." "Yeah, all 58 of them," I muttered under my breath, feeling my pulse spike. Dad ignored my sarcasm, cutting into his steak. "You can move your stuff to the basement. It's quieter down there anyway." I felt a flash of heat in my chest. The basement. Dark, damp, half-finished with a low ceiling that forced me to hunch and Wi-Fi that barely reached. It was a place where old furniture went to die, not where you built a future. The basement, I forced a thin smile, trying to keep my voice even. The one with the concrete floor and mildew smell. "You're serious? Come on." "David," Alex said, leaning back in his chair, his arms stretched behind his head like a king on his throne. "You'll be fine. I need the space for my lighting and sound panels." I wanted to laugh at the absurdity. I had just closed a $6,000 contract last month that paid for their new water heater after it broke down over Thanksgiving. Not a word of thanks, just another assumption that I'd keep picking up the slack while Alex got to chase his dreams with no pressure. Mom glanced up, finally pulling herself from her endless scrolling. "You should be supportive. Alex could really make something of this if he just had the right space." "And what about me?" I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut through the tension. "I've been running a full-time business out of that garage for years. I'm the one paying rent here, covering repairs, buying groceries half the time." Dad put down his knife, frowning. "Don't be dramatic. You can set up in the basement. It's not a big deal." I felt my pulse throbbing in my temples. Not a big deal. That space wasn't just some empty room. It was the heart of my efforts, my late nights, and my sacrifices. It was where I rebuilt my confidence after college, found my footing, and built a client base from scratch. I looked at Alex again, his smirk only growing wider as he reached for another handful of fries. He had that look, the one that said he'd already won, and I was just being difficult. That night, I sat in my garage office, the one they were so casually taking from me, and just stared at the setup I had meticulously built. My custom desk, the cable management I'd perfected, the soundproofing panels I'd saved up for, and the rows of project folders neatly stacked on my shelves. I ran my fingers over the smooth, reclaimed wood of my desk, remembering the weekends I spent sanding it down and staining it just right. This place was my sanctuary, my creative space, and my escape from the chaos of a family that never seemed to see me as more than a walking wallet. "They're really doing this," I whispered to myself, the words echoing off the walls. "They really think I'm just going to roll over and take this." I felt a knot tighten in my gut, a slow, simmering anger that had been building for years. I thought about all the times I'd bailed them out, fixed their car, paid their bills, and stayed quiet while they poured their hopes into Alex like he was some sort of golden child. I realized then that this wasn't just about the garage. It was about all the times they'd taken from me without a second thought. All the moments I'd swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, and let them treat me like a second-class member of my own family. That was the night I decided I wasn't going to let them take from me anymore. I was done being the family ATM, the handyman, the backup plan. I was going to take my life back one step at a time. The next morning, I skipped the usual family breakfast. I couldn't sit there pretending everything was fine, listening to my parents gush over Alex's latest video ideas or whatever new gadget he had convinced them he needed for his stream. Instead, I sat in my car parked in the driveway, scrolling through apartment listings. I had been saving for my own place, but the way Los Angeles rent was, I figured I needed at least another year. I leaned back in my seat, tapping my fingers on the steering wheel, weighing my options. I had just over $9,500 saved. If I tightened my budget and cut a few corners, maybe just maybe I could make this work sooner than I thought. A listing caught my eye. A small studio in Pasadena. 550 square feet, a bit worn around the edges but clean with big windows and a decent-sized alcove that would fit my desk setup perfectly. Rent $2,000 a month, which was actually below market for anything not actively falling apart. The landlord wanted first, last, and a security deposit. $6,000 up front. I did the math in my head. That would leave me with just over $3,500, tight but doable if I could land a few more contracts quickly. I took a deep breath, then typed out an email to the landlord attaching my credit score and income verification. I hesitated for a moment before hitting send, feeling the weight of what I was about to do. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. Available now. Can you come see it this afternoon? Hell yes, I could. I walked back into the house, my mind already racing through a checklist of what I'd need to pack, what I could leave behind, and how to break the news when the time came. As I passed the kitchen, Mom glanced up from her tablet. David, can you pick up groceries later? We're running low. I paused, gripping the doorframe, my jaw tight. Sure, I replied, forcing a neutral tone. But it'll just be the basics. Budget's a little tight this month. Her brow furrowed, clearly not expecting me to push back, but she said nothing as I turned and headed for my garage, my soon-to-be former office. Later that day, I drove over to Pasadena, my mind buzzing with a mix of anxiety and excitement. The studio was exactly as advertised. Small, a little dated, but clean and bright with a corner alcove that practically screamed future workspace. The landlord, a chill older lady named Janet, seemed to like me. She even gave me a small break on the deposit after I explained my situation. I signed the lease on the spot, paid the deposit, and walked out with a set of keys in my pocket. As I drove back to my parents' house, I felt a strange mix of triumph and anxiety. I should have done this years ago, but better late than never. When I got home, I found Dad in the garage, my garage measuring for Alex's new streaming setup. I felt my jaw clench as I watched him sketching out plans on a piece of scrap wood, oblivious to the fact that he was dismantling my sanctuary. He looked up when I entered. Hey, the printer's jammed again. Can you take a look? Your mother needs to print something for work. Normally, I would have dropped everything to fix it. 20 minutes of my life to clear out whatever paper Alex had crammed in there wrong. Not today. Sorry, can't. Client deadline, I said, brushing past him. Can it wait? He blinked, clearly not used to me refusing a request. Well, your mom needs it for work. Then maybe Alex should take a break from his streaming and handle it? I shot back, grabbing a stack of project files from my desk. I'm a little busy. I left him standing there confused and slightly annoyed and headed back to my room. That night, as I sat at my desk, I started quietly sorting through my things. Not packing, at least not obviously, just taking inventory. What I needed, what I could leave behind, what I had to replace. By the time I crawled into bed, I felt a strange simmering satisfaction, like I had finally started to take control of my life, to set boundaries that should have been there all along. The next morning, Alex cornered me in the kitchen. Hey, can you drive me to Justin's place later? My car's acting up again. His car. Actually, my old Honda that I had sold to him for half its value when he first got his license. He hadn't maintained it once. I didn't even look up from my coffee. Take the bus, I said flatly. He frowned. The bus, it's like 8 miles. Sounds like a personal problem, I replied, taking a long sip. He stood there for a moment, clearly not used to this new version of me, before storming off to complain to Mom. 5 minutes later, she appeared, her lips pressed into a tight line. David, your brother needs a ride. It would only take 20 minutes. I set my mug down, meeting her eyes for the first time in what felt like ages. I've got work, I said, keeping my tone even. You know, the thing that pays my bills and yours, apparently. Her mouth opened, then closed. She wasn't used to pushback from me, but I just turned back to my laptop, typing as if she wasn't even there. Small rebellions, but damn, they felt good. By the end of that week, my decision had hardened into something unbreakable. I was moving out. Not someday, not when things got better, but now. I had the keys to my new place in Pasadena, and with every passive-aggressive comment from my family, every entitled demand from Alex, my resolve only grew stronger. I started moving my things bit by bit, making sure not to raise suspicion. Every day I'd pack a few more essentials into my car, important documents, personal items, and the equipment I couldn't live without. I wanted to be ready to leave at a moment's notice if things blew up. I had learned my lesson over the years. My family didn't handle confrontation well. They were the kind of people who only appreciated you when you were gone, who took without asking and only realized their mistakes when it was too late. One afternoon, I found Dad in the garage again, this time struggling to hang up soundproofing panels for Alex's future streaming station. My old desk had already been pushed into a corner, cables hanging loosely like tangled veins, the neat setup I had once been proud of, now reduced to clutter. He glanced at me as I walked in, wiping sweat from his brow. "Hey, can you give me a hand with this? It's a two-man job." I paused at the door, my eyes trailing over the chaos that had once been my workspace. I remembered the countless hours I had spent here, the nights I had fallen asleep at that desk, my fingers still hovering over the keyboard as lines of code scrolled across my screen. "No," I said, simply, not breaking my stride as I crossed to the far side of the garage to grab another box of my belongings. "I've got a client meeting in an hour." He opened his mouth to protest, but seemed to think better of it. I could feel his eyes on my back as I packed a stack of project folders into the box, my hands moving with a steady, deliberate calm that felt almost cathartic. Later that night, Alex caught me in the kitchen, his face twisted into a mix of annoyance and confusion. "Dude, why are you being such a dick lately?" he snapped, tossing his empty energy drink can into the trash with a clatter. I looked up from the sandwich I was making, my expression blank. "Excuse me? You've been acting all weird. Ignoring Mom, not helping Dad, blowing me off when I ask for a favor. What's your problem?" I set the knife down, the sound of metal against the cutting board sharp in the quiet kitchen. "My problem?" I repeated slowly, locking eyes with him. "My problem is that I'm tired of being this family's unpaid handyman, tech support, and emergency fund." He scoffed, leaning back against the counter. "Oh, come on, don't be dramatic. You live here for practically nothing." I felt my jaw tighten. "I pay $900 a month in rent, cover half the utilities, and do most of the maintenance around this place. I'm not a freeloader, Alex. I'm a tenant, and you're not even that." He opened his mouth to argue but shut it again, his eyes flicking away as the reality of my words hit him. I took a slow, steady breath, willing my hands to stay steady as I picked up the knife again and resumed slicing my sandwich. He stormed off a moment later, muttering something under his breath that I chose to ignore. That night, as I lay in bed, I felt a strange, weightless clarity settle over me. I was done. Done with the thankless chores, the endless guilt trips, and the one-sided loyalty. I was carving out my own path now, and there was no going back. The next morning, Mom caught me in the hallway, a worried look creasing her forehead. "David, can you reset the router? The Wi-Fi's been cutting out again." I paused, my hand halfway to the door, my laptop bag slung over one shoulder. "Sorry, Mom, busy day. Maybe Alex can handle it." She blinked, clearly caught off guard by my refusal. "But you're always the one who fixes it. You know how your brother struggles with that kind of stuff." I forced a thin smile. Maybe it's time he learned. I walked out before she could protest, my footsteps echoing down the hallway like a countdown to my exit. That evening, as I packed another box of my belongings, I heard my parents arguing in the kitchen. Their voices were low but strained, the kind of hushed tones that said they didn't want me to hear but couldn't hold it in any longer. I paused, leaning against my doorframe, straining to catch the words. "He's been acting different," my dad was saying, his voice tinged with frustration. "Barely helps around the house anymore, always locked up in that garage. Maybe he's just stressed." My mom replied, a note of uncertainty in her tone. "He's always working, always worrying about money." Still, Dad muttered, "He could show a little more gratitude. We've given him a place to stay after all." I felt a bitter laugh rise in my throat, my fingers tightening around the edge of the box. Gratitude. They still didn't get it. As I taped the box shut, I realized that I didn't even care about their approval anymore. I didn't need it, and I certainly didn't owe them anything. They had taken enough from me over the years, my money, my time, my peace of mind. Now they were trying to take my workspace, my sanctuary, the one place in that house that felt like mine. But not anymore. I was done playing the role of the dutiful, accommodating son. I had made my choice, signed my lease, and set my escape plan in motion. The countdown had started, and this time I was the one holding the clock. As the days ticked by, my quiet rebellion grew bolder. I had begun moving my most important belongings into the new apartment piece by piece, while my family remained blissfully unaware. Every time they pushed me, every time they took me for granted, I packed another box. On Friday, I came home to find Dad trying to fix the old lawnmower. He was cursing under his breath, tools scattered around him, grease staining his work shirt. "David, can you come take a look at this? It keeps stalling out," he grumbled, wiping sweat from his forehead. I paused at the edge of the garage, my eyes drifting over the clutter that had overtaken my former workspace. Wire soundproofing panels and half-assembled stands for Alex's new streaming setup covered every surface. My old desk, the one I had built from reclaimed wood, now sat in a corner, shoved aside like an afterthought. Sorry, can't, I said, keeping my tone neutral. I've got a deadline. He frowned, clearly not expecting the refusal. Come on, it'll only take a few minutes. You're good with this kind of stuff. I met his eyes, feeling a flicker of the old resentment. Maybe Alex can help you. It's his turn to pitch in. I didn't wait for his response. I just turned and walked back inside, my heart pounding with a strange mix of defiance and liberation. Later that night, as I packed another box of my essentials, I heard Alex and Dad arguing in the garage. Their voices were muffled but sharp, each sentence a jab that echoed through the thin walls. Why do I have to mow the lawn? That's David's job. Your brother's busy, just do it this once. But I have a stream scheduled. My followers are expecting me. I almost laughed at that. All 58 of them. I could picture Alex sulking, his face twisted in annoyance as he realized he might actually have to contribute for once. The next morning, I made a point of leaving early, carrying another box of my belongings out to my car while the house was still quiet. As I reached the driveway, I noticed my dad standing in the garage, arms crossed, his gaze heavy. Hey, he called as I opened my trunk. You moving out or something? I hesitated, the box clutched tightly in my hands, my heart thudding in my chest. I forced a casual smile. Just decluttering. You know, trying to make some space? He frowned, clearly not convinced, but didn't push the issue. By the time I drove off, my heart was still racing, a mix of fear and exhilaration coursing through my veins. I had to be more careful. If they figured out what I was doing too soon, it would only lead to more guilt trips, more emotional manipulation. I spent the rest of the day at my new apartment unpacking the boxes I had already moved, setting up my desk in the small alcove near the window. It wasn't much, but it was mine, and that made all the difference. When I returned home that evening, I found Mom in the kitchen. Her face flushed, her movements sharp and agitated. The sink was full of dishes, the counters cluttered with the aftermath of what looked like a hastily prepared dinner. She looked up as I walked in, her eyes narrowing. David, where have you been? I called you 3 times. I forced a neutral expression. Out. Why, what's up? The Wi-Fi's been down all afternoon and I needed to print some documents for work. Your dad couldn't figure it out and Alex had no idea what to do. I bit back a bitter smile. Of course. The minute I wasn't around to play tech support, the whole house fell apart. Did you try unplugging the router? I asked, my voice dripping with forced patience. Yes, but it still won't connect. I sighed, setting my bag down on the counter. I'll take a look in a minute. As I walked toward the basement where the ancient router was tucked away behind a stack of forgotten holiday decorations, I felt the weight of my family's dependence on me more acutely than ever. The router was an ancient, dust-covered relic, its blinking lights struggling to keep up with the demands of a household that had grown too comfortable, relying on me for every technical fix. I reached down, unplugged. It waited a few seconds, then plugged it back in. The lights flickered, then steadied, and I knew the connection would be back up in a moment. As I climbed the stairs back to the kitchen, I found Mom hovering by the door, her expression a mix of relief and frustration. Is it working? She asked, her voice sharp, like I had somehow inconvenienced her by not being immediately available. Yeah, it should be fine now, I said, brushing past her. She huffed, turning back to her tablet without so much as a thank you, and I felt another piece of my patience crack. That night, as I packed the last of my important files into a worn cardboard box, I heard Alex whining to Dad again, his voice rising in that familiar grating tone. I can't stream with this connection. It keeps cutting out and the quality is garbage. Just reset the router, Dad replied, clearly annoyed. David fixed it earlier. I don't know how to do that. I smiled to myself, the sound of their frustration like music to my ears. They had taken me for granted for so long, assuming I would always be there to pick up the pieces, to fix the problems, to handle the messes they couldn't be bothered to deal with. But not anymore. I was almost free, my escape plan nearly complete. Just a few more days, a few more quiet steps toward the door, and I would be gone, leaving them to deal with the chaos they had created without me. For the first time in years, I felt a flicker of hope, a glimpse of the life I could finally have once I broke free from the weight of their expectations. And this time, I wasn't looking back. Saturday morning arrived, and with it a U-Haul truck parked conspicuously in the driveway. I had timed everything perfectly. My parents were out running errands, and Alex was still asleep, his door firmly shut, probably recovering from another late-night stream. I moved quickly, hauling boxes of my essentials into the truck with a steady, determined pace. I didn't bother to pack neatly, just tossed everything in, knowing I could sort it out later in my new place. Every clank of metal and thud of a heavy box felt like a small victory, each load a step closer to freedom. I had just finished securing my desk when I heard the front door creak open. My mom's voice echoed through the hall, sharp with confusion. "David, what's going on?" I turned, sweat dripping down my back, my heart thudding in my chest. There she was, standing in the doorway, her eyes wide as she took in the sight of the U-Haul, the half-empty garage, and me, arms full of cables and hard drives. I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to stay calm. "I'm moving out." Her face twisted, shock quickly giving way to a blend of anger and hurt. "What, you didn't tell us anything about this?" I shrugged, setting the box down on the truck's metal floor. "Didn't think I needed to. I'm an adult, remember, paying rent, covering bills, handling house repairs." She opened her mouth to protest, but I cut her off. "You made it clear that this space wasn't mine anymore. You're turning it into Alex's studio. So I'm making other arrangements." I watched the color drain from her face, her hands twisting together in that nervous way she had when things slipped out of her control. "David, you can't just leave like this. We're family." I felt a bitter laugh bubble up in my chest but held it back. "Funny, I don't remember much family when you sold my workbench or when you decided my office would be better used for Alex's hobby." She flinched, her eyes darting to the half-empty garage, realization slowly sinking in. I saw the guilt flash across her face, but I didn't let it soften my resolve. Just then Dad's truck pulled into the driveway, his expression shifting from confusion to shock as he took in the scene. He stepped out, letting the door slam shut behind him. "What the hell is going on here?" he demanded, his voice gruff, his eyes narrowing as he approached the truck. "I'm moving out," I repeated, my tone flat, my patience nearly gone. He glanced from me to the U-Haul, then back again, his jaw tightening. "Without even talking to us. After everything we've done for you." I dropped the last box onto the truck bed, the sound echoing off the walls like a final statement. "Done for me," I repeated, stepping down from the truck, my eyes locking onto his, like selling my workbench without asking, like deciding my office wasn't mine anymore, like expecting me to fix every broken thing in this house without so much as a thank you. He bristled, his face flushing with anger. "Don't be dramatic. We gave you a place to stay. We've supported you." I felt the last of my restraint snap. Supported me. I took a step closer, my voice low but firm. "I've been paying rent, covering bills, fixing everything you broke, and you still treat me like some ungrateful kid. Meanwhile, Alex contributes nothing and you treat him like a king." Dad's face twisted, his fists clenching. "You're twisting things." "Am I?" I shot back. "How much has Alex paid in rent? How many bills has he covered? How many hours has he spent fixing this place?" The silence that followed was deafening, the weight of unspoken truths hanging thick in the air. Finally, Dad took a shaky breath, his gaze dropping to the ground. "We didn't realize." I felt a cold, bitter satisfaction settle in my chest. "No, you didn't, and now you'll have to figure it out on your own." I turned back to the truck, grabbing the last of my things, refusing to let their silence pull me back into their twisted web of guilt and obligation. As I slammed the U-Haul's rear door shut, I heard my mom's voice crack behind me. "David, please. We can work this out. You don't have to leave." I hesitated for a moment, my hand resting on the metal handle, my heart pounding in my chest. I turned to face them one last time, my eyes cold, my voice steady. "I'm done being the backup plan, the handyman, the silent, convenient son. You made your choice when you decided to give my space to Alex. Now I'm making mine." With that, I climbed into the driver's seat, turned the key, and felt the engine roar to life. As I backed out of the driveway, I caught one last glimpse of them in the rearview mirror. Mom, her hands pressed to her mouth, tears streaking her cheeks, and Dad, his shoulders slumped, his face a mask of shock and confusion. And Alex standing on the porch in his pajama pants, his mouth hanging open in disbelief, finally realizing that the brother he had always taken for granted was really truly gone. As I merged onto the freeway, the U-Haul rumbling beneath me, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, a sense of freedom I hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long while, I allowed myself to smile. I had taken my life back, and this time I wasn't looking back. Story 2. I drove 7.5 hours to get there. 2 fuel stops, 1 sketchy rest area, and a gas station sandwich I instantly regretted. Still, I made the trip because it was a family reunion, and for some reason I kept believing that meant something. I pulled into my parents' driveway just past sunset. My back was stiff, my phone was dead, and all I wanted was to sit down, say hi, and eat something that didn't come wrapped in plastic. The house was buzzing. Kids were tearing into gifts. Someone had already cracked open the red wine. Laughter bounced off the walls like nothing had ever gone wrong in our family. Then I saw it. The dining table, once a staple of our family dinners, had one glaring change. My chair was gone. In its place, no exaggeration, was a pink designer dog bed, and lying in it, draped in a tiny cashmere sweater, was my sister's toy poodle Bella. She blinked at me like I was the intruder. "Chris?" My sister Lindsay called out from across the room with a voice 2 shades too bright. "Oh, wow, you made it. We honestly weren't sure you would." I stared at her. I texted an hour out. She lifted her phone. "Battery's been weird." Then she gestured toward the dog bed like she was introducing royalty. "Bella gets anxious if she doesn't have her spot. Hope that's okay?" I nodded once. Sure. It wasn't. But I'd been trained to eat discomfort with a smile. Dad didn't even look up from his phone. "You can eat in the den if you want. TV tray's in there." And just like that, I knew the hierarchy hadn't changed. Lindsay has always been the center of gravity in our family. Her needs priority, her problems ours, her dogs apparently above my existence. She was the spirited one according to Mom. That was code for she throws tantrums and gets away with it. I wasn't spirited, I was useful. When her first marriage collapsed, she called me, cried on the phone about how hard it was. I covered her rent for 3 months, paid off 2 vet bills, even updated her resume for her. She got a job at a luxury pet store that eventually paid more than mine. Never got a thank you. When she needed to fly cross-country last minute for a mental health reset, I covered the ticket. "You're the only one who supports me," she said. Translation: "You're the only one I can guilt." My parents. They've always played into it. "You know how she is," Mom would say, as if that excused anything. Dad once told me I needed to be more flexible. This was after I replaced their busted dishwasher and paid for their anniversary trip. When my car broke down last winter, they said maybe I should manage my money better. But Lindsay's poodle missing a grooming appointment? That was a family crisis. I kept telling myself this weekend was a reset. One last chance to feel like I belonged. But by day 2, that illusion was cracking. My stocking wasn't hung over the fireplace. Bella had one though, hand-stitched with dog treats and a spa gift card inside. When I asked where mine was, Mom said, "We thought you weren't coming," even though I'd confirmed twice. No one asked how my drive was, or how work was going, or how I'd been really. But I let it go, because that's what I do. Until the last night. I was sitting on the arm of the couch trying not to feel invisible when I got a notification from my bank. I opened the app and stared. 1-800 gone. Zelle transfer, memo line, reunion dinner, Linz. I looked up. Lindsay was swirling her wine by the fireplace. She saw me staring and grinned. "Oh, that. Dinner wasn't free, you know." I blinked. "Excuse me? You've got that new job, don't you? We figured you'd cover the food, and the wine, and the caterer. It's what families do, right?" She sipped her drink like it was a toast. I stood up. No raised voice, no drama. Just clarity. I grabbed my coat. Mom followed me toward the front door. "Don't make this a thing. It's just money." No, it wasn't. It was the last of what I'd saved from my freelance side gigs. Money I was going to use to finally fix my brakes, or maybe take a weekend trip of my own for once. They didn't ask. They just took it. I stood at the door, hand on the knob, and turned back. "Hey, Lindsay," I said, calm as ever. "Who gave you access to my bank account?" She rolled her eyes. "Relax. You Venmo'd me once last year. You never unlinked it. It's not like you're broke." Those words hit harder than they should have. Not broke, just useful. That was the moment I realized I wasn't the son or brother. I was the backup plan, the walking wallet, the guy they called when they didn't want to call each other. I wasn't family, I was a function, and I was done. I stepped outside, phone still in my hand. I hovered over report fraud, then I paused. Because suddenly I didn't want to just press a button. I wanted them to know, to see, to finally hear me. I walked back inside to a room full of half smiles and passive judgment. "Actually," I said, "while we're all here." Everyone turned. "I've got a quick story." Lindsay raised an eyebrow. Mom stiffened. Dad looked annoyed. "A guy drives 450 miles to see his family. He's the only one who drives, everyone else flies. He brings wine gifts, sleeps in the laundry room, his seat at the table given to a dog." Silence. "He doesn't complain. Then they take $1,800 from his account without asking." I turned to Lindsay. "And the punchline calls him poor." No one laughed. "That's funny to you?" I asked the room. No one spoke. "Cool," I said. "Here's my joke. You've got 1 hour to return that money before I press fraud." "I'm serious." Lindsay looked stunned. "You're overreacting." "No," I said. "I've been underreacting for years." And with that I left. But it wasn't over. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on the floor of the laundry room staring at the water-damaged ceiling and thought of every time I paid for something and never got paid back. Every time I drove someone home, covered a tab, replaced a bill, and got told I was just being helpful. I wasn't helpful, I was used. And I was finally going to stop being quiet about it. I barely slept that night, not because of guilt, but because of clarity. That kind of truth keeps you awake. I lay there on the lumpy laundry cot, listening to the soft hum of the dryer, staring at the ceiling like it owed me answers. No pillow, no blanket, just the quiet ache of old decisions catching up. I remembered birthdays where I brought the cake, paid for it, and still got stuck cutting and cleaning up. I remembered holidays where I gave gifts and left with nothing but side comments about how I always wore the same coat. I remembered helping Lindsay get a job when she could barely put together a resume, then watching her brag about how she nailed it while I stood in the background, clapping silently like her PR team. And I remembered the first time I said yes to covering a bill, telling myself it was just this once. That was 3 years and thousands of dollars ago. By morning, the decision was already made. I was done being the helper, the fix-it guy, the one who made life easier for everyone but himself. I packed every item I'd brought, chargers, clothes, even the cheap candle I brought as a house gift that no one opened. When I walked into the kitchen, Lindsay was there already sipping her oat milk latte like nothing had happened. She looked up and smirked. Wow, dramatic exit energy. Coffee. No thanks, I said. You're still mad about dinner. I paused. Still? Come on, she said, brushing it off. It was a group decision. Dad said you wouldn't mind. I turned to look at my father, who sat peeling a banana like it was a job. You said that? He shrugged. We just figured you'd want to help. Figured. That word, it always came before a quiet exploitation. They figured I'd pay. Figured I'd stay quiet. Figured I'd keep playing my role. I put my bag down on the kitchen floor. Then I turned to face all of them, my sister, my parents, her husband, who was already pretending to be busy pouring cereal like this wasn't his circus. I checked my accounts last night. I said, voice steady. Do you know how much I've spent on this family in the past 2 years? No answer. $20.914. A low gasp from Mom. Lindsay scoffed. You're exaggerating. I pulled out my phone and read the list. Vet bills, rent deposits, Uber rides, food delivery receipts, the replacement iPad. Lindsay accidentally bought on her credit card that I paid off. Every dollar had a name, every date. I documented it all. It's not your business, Lindsay said sharply. It became my business, I said, the minute you decided I'd foot the bill. I turned to my father. When was the last time you called me just to talk without needing something? He looked down at his banana like it had suddenly become interesting. Then I turned to Mom. You once said Lindsay's pet boutique job was more respectable than mine because at least she works face-to-face with customers. She opened her mouth, paused, and shut it again. I bought you a new laptop last year, I said, so you could video call your friends. From my disrespectable tech job. Silence. I took a breath. This isn't about one dinner or a stolen bank transfer. This is about all the little things that stacked up so high I can't see over them anymore. Lindsay crossed her arms. You're being emotional. No, I said, I'm being clear. I held up my phone. I've already reversed the charge. The $1,800 is coming back, and I've reported unauthorized access. Her jaw dropped. You wouldn't. I already did. Her face flushed. That's fraud, Chris. No, I said what you did was fraud. I just labeled it correctly. That was when Mom finally stepped forward. Please, she said, let's not tear the family apart over money. I shook my head. This isn't about money. This is about worth, respect. And if I'm honest, I haven't felt either in this house in a very long time. She looked at me like I'd slapped her. I didn't enjoy it, but I didn't take it back either. I pulled a small black folder from my backpack and laid it on the kitchen counter. What's that? Dad asked warily. Proof, I said. Screenshots, bank records, every time I covered something that wasn't mine. Labeled and dated, just in case. In case of what Lindsay muttered. In case anyone tries to gaslight me about what really happened. Then I pulled out a flash drive. This backup. Copies of the same files in case I need to get legal about it. Just a little insurance policy. Her husband finally stepped in, eyes wide. Okay, this is going too far. I looked at him. You know what's too far? Being expected to pay for other people's vacations while sleeping next to a washing machine. He looked away. Lindsay's voice cracked. You're blowing this up over what a misunderstanding. No, I said. I'm blowing up the fantasy that I was ever treated like family here. Then I reached into my bag one last time and pulled out something else, a photo. From last year's reunion. I was barely visible in it, standing behind the table holding a tray of drinks while everyone else smiled in the center. I flipped it over. Taped to the back was a printed check. $1, made out to Lindsay Carver. Memo line for all the thanks I ever got. I placed it gently on the counter. You wanted something from me. There you go. No one spoke. I think they finally understood that this wasn't just a tantrum. This was an exit. I'm done, I said, turning to the door. Where are you even going? Dad asked. To someone's house where I'm not treated like a debit card with legs. I walked outside into the crisp morning air. Didn't check my phone, didn't cry, didn't second guess. Until a buzz in my pocket broke the silence. It was a message. From my Aunt Carla, the black sheep. The one who stopped showing up to family holidays 10 years ago after a fight no one ever talked about. Heard what happened. I'm proud of you. Dinner's on me tonight if you want real family. I smiled, and for the first time in years it wasn't fake. I didn't drive away just yet. I stood there for a moment, staring at the house that raised me, used me, ignored me, and realized I didn't need it anymore. But I wasn't done yet. There was still one more thing I had to do. A goodbye they wouldn't forget. I turned around, walked back up the steps. One last time. My hand didn't even hesitate on the door handle. No part of me felt nervous. They were all still inside. Still frozen. Still digesting the fact that I had finally drawn a line, that I didn't come to play peacekeeper or wallet this time. Lindsay turned first. Oh, what now? She snapped. You forgot your speech notes. I didn't answer right away. I just walked in, set my bag on the floor again, and pulled out one last item. A second folder. This one wasn't for memory. It was for accountability. Here, I said, placing it on the coffee table like a final stone at the end of a trail. I figured since we're all about honesty now, you should see exactly who I've been in this family. Inside were printed bank statements, screenshots of transfers, time-stamped texts from Lindsay asking for help, a spreadsheet of expenses color-coded by person, date, and category, and one final page, a letter I'd written the night before. Not to them, to myself. A reminder of every time I gave and why, of how many chances I offered, of how I kept waiting for someone to see me, not just what I could provide. It wasn't dramatic. It was documentation. Proof that this wasn't an outburst. It was a pattern breaking. This, I said, nodding at the flash drive I placed next to the folder, is for the bank and the IRS, just in case. Dad stood slow and cautious. You're threatening us with taxes? No, I said. I'm protecting myself. Because I know now if I don't draw boundaries with this family, no one else will. Lindsay looked pale. Mom finally spoke. Her voice was softer now. We didn't know you were keeping track. That's the thing, I said. I wasn't. For years I didn't. But when you keep bleeding and no one offers a bandage, eventually you start counting the cuts. I pulled out one last object, a framed photo. Me standing in the back at a family barbecue holding tongs, not smiling. Everyone else was front and center, drinks in hand, laughing. My name wasn't even tagged when it was posted online. Taped to the back of the frame. A check. Made out to Lindsay Carver. Amount $1. Memo for all the thanks I ever got. I placed it on the coffee table. Let it speak for me. Lindsay opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Mom looked like she wanted to cry, or explain, or rewind time. Dad just sat down slowly and stared at the folder like it was made of fire. I've spent my whole life making things easier for this family, I said. Quietly. You needed a ride, I drove. You needed a bill covered, I sent it. You needed emotional labor, I carried it. I looked at each of them, and the one time I ask for nothing but respect, I get silence. Or sarcasm. Lindsay finally found her voice. You always act like you're better than us. No, I said. I act like I deserve the same dignity you all expect by default. That's when I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder again, and turned to the door. As I opened it, Mom said, Chris, don't do this. We're still your family. I paused, just for a second, then turned halfway back. Family, I said quietly, doesn't mean free labor. It doesn't mean loyalty without kindness. It doesn't mean silence in the face of disrespect. Her eyes filled. We were trying. We thought you didn't mind. I did, I said. You just never asked. Then I walked out. I didn't look back this time, because that house, the one I'd driven 8 hours to reach, had never actually been home. Not to me. Not for a long time. I drove straight to Aunt Carla's. She met me at the door in an oversized hoodie and slippers, holding a paper plate covered in foil. Hope you're hungry, she said. She didn't ask what happened, didn't press for details. She just fed me, sat with me, turned on reruns of a bad cooking show, and handed me a glass of something sweet and cold. And for the first time, I didn't have to prove anything to be welcome. No gifts, no receipts, no performance. Just presence. That night I slept on her couch. The springs squeaked. The blanket was scratchy. Her cat sat on my chest half the night, but I slept deeper than I had in months. Because I wasn't needed, I was accepted. The next morning I got to work, logged into my accounts, removed every shared login linked card subscription I'd been quietly supporting for years. Lindsay's pet cam subscription gone. Mom's shared Prime account canceled. Dad's cell plan disconnected. They didn't get a warning. Just a reminder of what it feels like when your convenience is no longer someone else's burden. Calls started that afternoon. I ignored them all. Mom left a voicemail. "Chris, you've broken this family. I hope you're happy." I deleted it before it finished. Dad tried a video call. Blocked. Lindsay sent a string of texts, each one angrier than the last. "You're overreacting. You made Mom cry. Don't expect us to forgive you." Then finally, "You're dead to us." That one made me smile. Because for once I wasn't buried under their expectations. I was free. It's been 2 months now. No texts, no holiday invites, no guilt-soaked voicemails. Just silence. And somehow it feels better than the noise ever did. I cook now. Not just microwave meals, but actual food. Chopped onions, roasted garlic, bowls I actually finish. I sleep 8 hours. Wake up without that familiar knot in my stomach. I've reconnected with friends I used to cancel on. Said yes to dinner, said no to guilt. Started dating again. Turns out boundaries are attractive. Who knew? Last week I got a message from Lindsay's ex-husband's sister. The quiet one. The one who used to thank me when I helped with their kids, even though Lindsay never did. She said, "I left him. You were right. I'm done cleaning up messes I didn't make." Then, "Also thank you for everything you ever did." The kids might not remember, but I do. I didn't respond right away. I just sat with it, let it settle in my chest. Because sometimes the words you always needed come from people who weren't even supposed to owe you anything. A few nights ago, I got invited to a friend's Friendsgiving. Just a few people, too much wine, one store-bought pie, laughter that wasn't forced. They didn't care how much I made or how often I visited. They just made space. And after a few drinks, someone asked me what made me finally cut my family off. So I told the story about the dog bed, the stolen money, the receipt folder, the framed photo, the $1 check. When I finished, the room was silent. Then someone raised a glass. "Dude," he said, "you're the main character." And I laughed hard, because for once I wasn't in the background. Here's what I learned. It's not selfish to walk away. It's self-respect. It's not dramatic to set boundaries. It's survival. And if anyone tells you otherwise, they were probably benefiting from your silence. If you're reading this wondering whether it's too late to stop being the family doormat, it's not. You can leave. You can reclaim your seat at a table that actually makes space for you. You don't have to keep paying for love that only shows up when it needs something. And when you do walk away, slam the door hard enough that they feel the echo. Then keep walking. Toward peace. Toward people who see you. Toward a version of yourself that doesn't flinch every time someone says, "Can I ask a favor?" Because you are not a favor. You're a person. And you deserve better. Story 3. I was 28 when my parents called a family meeting. It was a chilly Sunday afternoon, and we gathered in the living room of our childhood home. My sister Emily sat across from me, her manicured fingers wrapped around a glass of wine, a smug smile playing on her lips. Mom slid a small black box across the coffee table toward me. "You can open it now," she said, her tone unreadable. I hesitated, glancing at Dad, who leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, eyes heavy with that familiar blend of boredom and superiority. Something felt off. I opened the box. Inside was a brown leather wallet, cheap and unremarkable. I flipped it open to find a $1 bill folded neatly inside. "Is this a joke?" I asked, looking up. Emily chuckled. "It's symbolic," she said. Dad nodded. "That's more than you'll ever need. You've never cared much about money, right?" I blinked, trying to process. "You gave Emily the house, the savings, the lake property, and I get $1. Mom chimed in. "Emily was here. She took care of us after your surgery, paid the bills when things got hard." I nearly choked. "I sent money every month. I covered Dad's hospital stay when your insurance didn't. I paid Emily's rent for 2 years when she was between jobs." "Don't be petty," Mom snapped. "We made our decision. That's that." For a moment, I just sat there staring at them, trying to decide whether this was some sort of social experiment or if they genuinely believed their own fiction. Emily the golden child. Me the disposable one. It had always been that way. But this time it hit different. This wasn't just favoritism. This was a razor. I stood up, took the wallet, and shoved it in my coat pocket. "I hope it buys you the peace of mind you've never given me," I said. Mom sighed like I was the ungrateful one. Emily rolled her eyes. I left. No one stopped me, not even a whisper of wait. It took me years of grinding of 20-hour days and ramen dinners and saying no to every little indulgence. But in year 5, I hit gold. My company went viral. Within 6 months, I was a millionaire. That's when the messages started. Hey stranger, Emily texted. Hope you're doing well, said Mom. Dad didn't text, but a missed call from his number said enough. I ignored them until last week. I picked up just once to see what they'd say. You're doing well now, Mom said softly. We were wondering if you could help us with something. It's been difficult lately. I didn't answer at first. Then she added, You've always wanted to prove you're good enough. And just like that, the old wound ripped open again. But I didn't bleed, I smiled. You're still not good enough, she said when I didn't immediately agree. I leaned back in my chair, took a deep breath and said, Then let Emily handle your debt. And I hung up. But that wasn't even the real twist. Because 2 hours later, Emily showed up at my office. And what she said next changed everything. When Emily walked into my office unannounced, it didn't feel like a reunion. It felt like a heist. Same girl, new script. She sat down like she belonged there. Hair in a bun, designer coat, heels scuffed at the toes. We need to talk, she said. No greeting, I asked. 5 years and not even a, hey, how have you been? She didn't flinch. Mom and Dad are drowning. Dad's gambling again. Mom's got 2 credit cards maxed out. They thought I could cover it because of the inheritance. My heart slowed, but it's gone. My fingers tightened on my desk edge. Gone how? She didn't blink. I gave most of it back. Little by little, mortgage help, emergency loans. The rest I invested with a crypto guy. I scoffed. Let me guess he had a hoodie, no real name, and promised 300% returns. Her jaw tightened. I thought I could double it. He had a following. Of course he did. They always do. I warned you, I said. I warned all of you when I got that wallet and you laughed. This isn't about the past, she said, leaning in. They need help, real help, and I can't do it anymore. Why ask me? Because you can afford it. Wrong answer. No, I said. I was never the rich one. I was the reliable one. There's a difference. Her eyes narrowed. So that's it. You're just gonna let everything fall apart. The house. Their health. I folded my hands. You're not here for them. You're here for yourself. Because when they sink, you go down with them. And then just like always, she said the line they'd all practiced over the years. You owe us. We raised you. I stood slowly. No, you raised me like a tool. I was the fallback plan, the walking emergency fund. She opened her mouth probably to say something about being stronger together, but I kept going. You watched them hand me $1 and stayed silent. You called me bitter when I stopped paying your rent. You posted #family first while I skipped meals to cover your credit card bills. I didn't get a seat at the table, I was the damn table. Her expression cracked, tears pooled, maybe real, maybe performative, I didn't care. As she stood to leave, she stopped in the doorway. If you think this is over, you're wrong. They have a plan. You won't like it. The click of her heels on the hallway tiles felt like a countdown. 3 days later, a white envelope arrived. No return address. Just my name written in that same swirly cursive she used to forge Mom's signature on sick notes. Inside a notice of claim, a lawsuit, failure to fulfill financial obligations to immediate family, emotional damages from abandonment. I laughed, out loud, alone. Then I called my lawyer. He skimmed the document and chuckled. This is theatrical nonsense. Tell that to my blood pressure, I muttered. I didn't respond. I knew how this game worked. They wanted me to react. They wanted me to lose my cool, say something they could use. Instead, I waited. They escalated. Emily posted a carousel of childhood photos with a long caption, When the person you loved most becomes a stranger, family is supposed to be forever. Comments flooded in. Yo, you're so strong. He must have changed. Greed ruins everything. No one asked why her crypto genius needed 6 figures. No one asked about the dollar bill in the wallet. Context isn't as photogenic as tears. Then came the office visit. My assistant buzzed me. Your mother's here. Should I send her away? I paused. I should have said yes, but I didn't. She walked in like she always did, like the room belonged to her. Beige cardigan, pearls, perfect lipstick. The same mother who once told me, some people are meant to provide, not receive. But her eyes were different this time, sunken, unsteady. You look thin, she said like we were catching up over coffee. I didn't answer. She sat down across from me. No permission asked. Emily's struggling, she started. We're all struggling. Your father's not well. Gambling again. She flinched. Don't be cruel. I'm not. I'm being honest. Try it sometime. She glanced around like the truth might stain the upholstery. I came here to fix things. Start by dropping the lawsuit. She froze. It wasn't personal, it was desperate. No, it was calculated. You sued your son because he stopped paying for your mistakes. We raised you, she repeated like it was a holy phrase. No, I said, you monetized me. Her voice rose. You were always cold, difficult, different. I sent thousands to keep your lights on while you told your friends I was ungrateful. I paid your mortgage while you handed my sister your praise. You gave her assets. You gave me pity. You're still bitter about that wallet, she asked, incredulous. That wallet was the thesis statement of my childhood. She stood face red now. You'll never belong. You never did. I nodded. Then let Emily handle your debt. And I walked her out. No hug, no guilt trip, just me, the silence, and the heavy click of the office door behind her. But they weren't finished. That night, Emily went live on Instagram. Tears streaming. Croaky voice. He disowned us. We always loved him. He left us with nothing. The comment section turned into a digital pity parade. He's evil. Cut him off, Queen. He forgot who raised him. I watched for 2 minutes, then I closed the app and deleted it. Let them tell their version. I had mine. The next morning, I got a voicemail from a number I hadn't seen in a decade. Uncle Darren, my dad's older brother. The selfish one who walked away from the family business and moved to Oregon to build furniture and surf. His voice was low and calm. Just saw Emily's meltdown online. I know what it's like. I got out. You can too. Proud of you, kid. Call if you need anything. I stared at the screen, because for the first time in my life, someone in my family saw the fire and didn't blame me for the smoke. In the weeks that followed, things got quiet. No new lawsuit updates. No crying posts. No blocked calls. Even Emily's social media went dark. But I didn't relax. Silence in my family wasn't peace, it was strategy. I kept living anyway. For the first time in years, I slept through the night. No phantom guilt knocking at 3 a.m. No what now weighing down my morning coffee. Just quiet, just mine. Work thrived. The startup grew. My team respected me. My friends actually heard from me. And for once, I wasn't someone's financial cushion. I wasn't the fixer. I was just me. Then came the next ambush. My lawyer Sarah walked into my office and dropped a folder on my desk. New claim. This time Emily's naming you personally. Emotional damages. Says you manipulated your elderly parents into poverty. I raised an eyebrow. That's the angle now. She's going public, Sarah said. PR spin. Trying to build a paper trail. You're being painted as a heartless millionaire. Of course I was. The stable one. The one with boundaries. Always the villain in families like mine. I didn't flinch. I want to go public, I said. Are you sure? Very. It wasn't about revenge. It was about record keeping. I went on a podcast, quiet, serious, no fluff. I told the story. The dollar wallet. The unpaid hospital bills I covered. The inheritance my sister blew on crypto and manipulation. The smear campaigns. The lawsuit. I didn't rant. I didn't insult. I just told the truth. And truth has a frequency people recognize even when it hurts. The episode hit 1.4 million views in 48 hours. The narrative flipped. Maybe he's not heartless. Maybe he's healed. He set boundaries. That's not betrayal, it's self-respect. And the final blow. Emily tried a long Facebook rant. Big words. Childhood pictures. A single sentence in bold. He changed. No one replied. No one cared. Her power didn't come from truth. It came from silence. And I had taken mine back. After I went public, things didn't explode. They faded. The comments dried up. Emily's Facebook rant barely made a ripple. No anonymous blog posts followed. No sudden countersuits or follow-up threats. Just silence. And silence in a family like mine means one of two things. They're regrouping, or they finally realized the door's closed. I didn't care which it was. For the first time in years, I wasn't bracing for the next guilt trip. I could wake up, sip my coffee in my own kitchen, and not have to rehearse a boundary in my head before checking my phone. It felt like stepping out of a long winter into still air. 6 months passed. No lawsuits. No crying live streams. No drive-by visits to the office. Emily disappeared from social media. Mom stopped posting Bible quotes about prodigal children. Dad still silent. But that was normal. They weren't reaching out anymore. And that's what made me suspicious. Not because I expected better, but because I knew them. They didn't know how to stop unless someone or something made them stop. But I had bigger things to think about. The business was thriving. My team had grown. I'd built an app that was being acquired by a mid-tier tech firm. My lawyer was on top of everything. My therapist said I was finally showing signs of post-traumatic clarity. I just called it peace. For once I started buying things for myself. Not flashy status junk, just things I used to tell myself I didn't deserve. A mattress that didn't hurt my back. An espresso machine I didn't have to justify. A music setup I'd always wanted since I was a teenager, tapping beats on lunch tables while everyone else bragged about spring break. I took a breath and bought it. Not because I needed it, because I wanted it. That was new. Then one afternoon at a local cafe it happened. I was sitting by the window, laptop open, noise-canceling headphones on, sipping a cappuccino that cost too much and tasted exactly right. A voice cut through the music. "Hey, I wasn't sure it was you." I looked up. It was my cousin Maya. Daughter of Mom's second cousin, one of the few relatives who'd stayed quiet during the smear campaigns. She sat down across from me without waiting. "I saw the podcast," she said. I braced myself. "Let me guess, you think I went too far?" She shook her head. "No, I think you finally told the truth, and everyone else just didn't have the stomach for it." I blinked. She continued, "My mom co-signed a loan for Emily once. Lost her credit score. Grandma almost lost her house because she stepped in to cover it. None of us said anything. We just watched you burn and thought better him than us." My chest went still. "Why now?" I asked. "Why say this now?" She stirred her drink, eyes steady. "Because I saw you walk away. And I thought, maybe I can too." She left without another word, but her voice stayed with me. That night, I stood in my home office staring at the frame on the shelf. The same brown wallet they gave me. Still had that $1 folded inside. I never spent it. Never threw it out. Beside it was a note my therapist once gave me. Just 4 words. "Real love doesn't invoice." I believed that now. But it had taken losing everything tied to them to learn it. A week later, my phone buzzed. Unknown number, no name, no context. Just a message. "Mom's in assisted living now. Emily's living at the lake house. Dad's pension is gone. Figured you'd want to know." No signature, but I didn't need one. That wasn't information. That was bait. A final attempt to pull me back into the role I was raised for, the savior. The patch. The financial fire escape. I didn't reply. Instead, I turned back to my dog snoring softly on the couch. A rescued shepherd mix I named River, who listened more in 1 week than my family had in 30 years. I scratched behind his ears and whispered, "We're not going back, buddy." And he wagged his tail like he understood. A few months later, I was invited to speak at a tech conference. The topic? Burnout boundaries and the myth of family loyalty. I almost said no, but then I thought about the younger me. The one who sent money instead of buying groceries. The one who called his parents 3 times a week just to get passive-aggressive comments in return. The one who thought giving was love. He deserved a voice. So I flew out, walked onto that stage and told my story. Not for revenge, not for applause, but for the one person in the crowd who needed to hear it. Who needed to know that choosing yourself doesn't make you cruel. It makes you free. After the panel, a guy maybe 22, quiet, skinny, in a worn hoodie came up to me. He didn't say much, just handed me a yellow sticky note. On it, he'd written, "Thank you." I thought I was the only one, and that was the real inheritance. Not the house Emily sold, not the savings she funneled into crypto disasters, not the lake property they tried to guilt me into saving. It was this proof that you can walk away. That love without respect is just control dressed in nice words. That being the strong one doesn't mean you owe anyone your peace. That you can say, "I'm not your backup plan," and still sleep at night. The story didn't end with a dramatic reckoning. There were no grand apologies, no tearful reunions, just life. Quieter. Lighter. Mine. I still keep that dollar bill. Not because it means anything, but because now I do.